ENET Philippines is a national coalition of civil society organizations engaged in policy advocacy and the promotion of partnerships for education reforms. This video contains animated scenes, charts, and illustrations. There are also Filipino Sign Language inset and closed captions.
Topic number 3. Disability in Focus. Learning activity number 6. Thinking about persons with disabilities. Number 1. Reminisce the times when you were between 8 to 12 years old. Back then, what was your idea of persons with disabilities? What were the ideas of persons with disabilities based on TV, newspaper, films, and other media? How about from your family, friends, and school? What was your feeling associated with persons with disabilities? Do you have relatives or classmates with disabilities? How do people engage with them and or talk about them? Going back to the present time, are there changes on your own and others' perspective and relationship of persons with disabilities? Input. Topic number 3.1. The 4 popular approaches to disability. Over the years, people have different views and approaches to disability. A. Charity approach. People with disabilities are perceived as objects of pity and benevolence and cannot take care of themselves. It sees disability as a curse or punishment. Policies are framed around segregation and incapacitation. B. Medical approach. Persons with disabilities are seen as broken, sick, and subject only of rehabilitation. Persons with disabilities are reduced to their impairment. They need to be fixed, rehabilitated, and look normal so they can meet societal norms and fit back to the community. Policies and programs only revolve around rehabilitation. Most of the time, medical and psychiatric professionals, including families, take over the lives of persons with disabilities. C. Social approach. The problem is the environmental and attitudinal barriers, not the persons with impairments. Barriers should be eliminated and inclusion of persons with disabilities should be facilitated. Policies and programs must be inclusive of persons with disabilities. D. Human rights-based approach. Similar to the social approach, barriers must be eliminated and inclusion and participation should be facilitated. Persons with disabilities are subjects of human rights. Having a disability is part of humanity and human diversity. Impairment must not be legitimate to deny or restrict a person of her, his, or their human rights. States have the primary obligation to promote, protect, and ensure the exercise and enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms of persons with disabilities like everyone else. The human rights-based approach is outlined in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Disability Article 1 of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities recognizes persons with disabilities as including those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. Impairment X barriers is equivalent to disability. Impairment plus accessible and inclusive environments plus support services equal full inclusion and meaningful participation. Impairment is not equal to disability. Topic number 3.2. Barriers. What are barriers? Are anything that hinders persons with disabilities from enjoying or exercising all human rights and fundamental freedoms in the political, economic, social, cultural, civil, or any other field on an equal basis with others? Barriers in all its forms encompass inaccessible physical environments and transportation, the unavailability of assistive devices and technologies, inaccessible information both in form and content, non-adaptive means of communication, gaps in service delivery such as unavailability of personal assistance in sign language interpretation service, discrimination including denial of reasonable accommodation, attitude, prejudice, and stigma in society, programs, policies, and laws infringing on the rights of persons with disabilities as recognized under the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Types of barriers. A. Attitudinal. This is the most pervasive and deep-seated among the barriers. The way we think of disability and persons with disabilities can influence our words, policies, programs, and practices. Examples: stereotyping, stigma, teasing, bullying, portrayal as heroes and superhumans when they achieve something to inspire people without disabilities. This is actually rooted from low expectations towards persons with disabilities. B. Physical. Structural obstacles prevent people with disabilities from accessing and moving around. Examples: uneven paths, narrow doorways, absence of ramps and/or elevators, poor lighting, inaccessible toilet, equipment, and vehicles. Letter C. Information and communication. If the form and content of information and communication can't be accessed, received, and understood by persons with disabilities. Examples: information is only available in printed or audio format. Visual content like videos and pictures have no image description, alternative text, and transcripts. Websites and mobile apps are not readable using assistive technology. No sign language interpreting during in-person and online activities, including TV shows and online videos. Documents are not available in plain language and easy-to-read formats. Letter D. Institutional policy. Laws, policies, and practices that discriminate against persons with disabilities or absence of laws, policies, and practices to promote, protect, and ensure the enjoyment of rights of persons with disabilities. Examples: laws that deny persons with intellectual and psychosocial disabilities the exercise of their right to vote. Laws on substituted decision-making and guardianship. Absence of comprehensive and disability-specific anti-discrimination law. Non-allocation of budget to mainstream disability or disability-specific programs and services. Placing learners with disabilities in segregated learning environment, for example, special schools. In order to enable persons with disabilities to fully participate and access opportunities for development, The barriers that limit their participation should be systematically addressed. Article 3. General Principles. The principles of the present convention shall be a. Respect for inherent dignity, individual autonomy, including the freedom to make one's own choices and independence of persons. Inherent dignity refers to the worth of every person. The experiences and views of persons with disabilities are respected and valued without the fear of any kind of harm, physical, emotional, and/or psychological. Individual autonomy is being in charge of one's life and having the freedom to make one's own choices. Persons with disabilities have reasonable life choices on an equal basis with others, are subjected to minimum interference in their lives, and can make their own decisions with adequate support if required. Examples: a queer person with cerebral palsy expresses their sexuality and actively promotes accessibility in LGBTQIA+ spaces. A person with intellectual disability signed an employment contract that was made available in easy read format. B. Non-discrimination. A fundamental principle of all human rights treaties and the basis of UNCRPD. It essentially prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. Denial of reasonable accommodation is disability-based discrimination. It is a combination of prohibiting discriminatory acts and taking steps to protect people with disabilities from direct and indirect forms of discrimination and promote equality, inclusion, and participation. Many persons with disabilities experience multiple forms of discrimination that must be addressed. For example, sex, gender, age, race, language, socio-economic status, size, religion, or beliefs, etc. Examples: Republic Act 7277 or the Magna Carta for Persons with Disability and its amendments prohibit verbal and nonverbal ridicule and vilification against persons with disabilities. Republic Act 11650 aims that all learners with disabilities in the Philippines will have equal access and receive equitable support to basic primary and secondary education like their peers without disabilities. Letter C. Full and effective participation and inclusion in society. Persons with disabilities are participating in both public and private spaces. They are part of the discussion and decision-making on all levels. It goes beyond consultation but being able to express their opinions, influence, give feedback, and complain if participation is denied. Preconditions for participation are an inclusive and accessible environment. Examples: ENET Philippines has a cluster for persons with disabilities to support their formulation and advocacy of their sector-specific agenda. ENET member organizations of persons with disabilities are also part of the National Advocacy Council. The family member with physical impairment discussed with other family members the design and process of their house renovation to make it accessible. D. Respect for difference and acceptance of persons with disabilities as part of human diversity and humanity. Having an impairment and experiencing disability are both part of human diversity. People with disabilities are neither special nor require special treatment. The support they require just happens to be specific to them. All of us have similarities and differences. People with the same impairments may require different kinds of support too. Examples: two people with low vision are working in the same company. One of them prefers documents in large print, while the other requires it to be available in accessible digital format. Data are disaggregated by sex, age, and disability. Letter E. Equality of opportunity. Society and the environment are made available to all, including persons with disabilities. Equality doesn't always mean the same treatment. People may require specific support to equally access an opportunity. Examples: a participant with visual impairment was given reasonable accommodation to be accompanied by a personal assistant during a training course to support their participation. The travel cost was shouldered by the organizers, plus income replacement to the participant with visual impairment. During budget hearings, Filipino Sign Language interpreting services are available so deaf participants can take part in the discussions. Letter F. Accessibility. Accessibility is not only physical access, but also in information and communication, ICT, availability of human support, among others. Accessibility must be present in all private and public dimensions. Laws and policies on accessibility must be regularly reviewed and updated with the active involvement of OPDs, and adequate resources must be given to fully implement and upgrade it. Accessibility must be for all persons with disabilities regardless of sex, gender, age, and geographical location. Examples: the Department of Transportation is conducting stakeholders consultation on the updating of the implementing rules and regulations on the accessibility of public transportation. TESDA contracted the services of an organization of persons with visual impairment specializing in digital accessibility to test, audit, and improve the accessibility of their website and its content. G. Equality between men and women. Equality of opportunity between men and women, girls and boys. UNCRPD emphasizes having a gender perspective in all states' policies, programs, and activities, mainstream disability or disability specific. There's still a need to further emphasize LGBTQIA++ by specifically mentioning them and implementing concrete measures to promote, protect, and ensure their rights. Examples: reviewing gender and development budget allocations to ensure the incorporation of a disability-inclusive perspective, focusing on accessibility and the participation of persons with disabilities, particularly women, girls, and LGBTQIA++. Childcare support for women with disabilities must be provided so they can participate in community organizing and mobilization. H. Respect for the evolving capacities of children with disabilities and respect for the right of children with disabilities to preserve their identities. This is a process of supporting the development of a child, maturation, autonomy, and self-expression. This recognizes that children with disabilities progressively acquire knowledge, competencies, and understanding of their rights and actively participate in all discussions and decision-making that impact them. Children with disabilities have the right to preserve their identities and be registered at birth and other official documents. Examples: a child with a disability takes part in the scheduling of home management and home-based rehabilitation activities with their parents and other siblings. Children with disabilities lead in raising awareness to other children about safe and unsafe touch and proper hygiene. The general principles are the foundation of the human rights model of the UNCRPD. It must be applied in its entirety in all undertakings of the government and non-government organizations. UNCRPD must reach local communities. Discrimination on the basis of disability. Any distinction exclusion, or restriction on the basis of disability which has the purpose or effect of impairing or nullifying the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise on an equal basis with others of all human rights and fundamental freedoms in the political, economic, social, cultural, civil, or any other field. It includes all forms of discrimination, including denial of reasonable accommodation. Direct discrimination occurs when one person is treated less favorably than another because of their background on certain personal characteristics. Examples: in some countries, a person with intellectual disability is not allowed to vote. A passenger using a wheelchair is being charged with higher fare by a taxi driver. Many persons who are blind are denied by bank personnel to open their own bank accounts. Learners with disabilities remain in SPED centers or classrooms during fire or earthquake drills. Indirect discrimination refers to laws, policies, and practices that apply to everyone in the same way and may appear neutral, however, have a worse effect on some people than others. Examples: the Department of Education has a no-rejection policy for learners. However, the support needed by learners with disabilities are either not available or not provided. The bank has no scanner for signatures using thumb marks. There are accessible cubicles inside female and male-assigned toilets. However, there's no spare accessible toilet for PA service users and personal assistants who belong to different sects. The Social Amelioration Program, or AYUDA, didn't consider the disability-related costs of persons with disabilities in the financial assistance they gave. Denial of reasonable accommodation, according to Article 2 of the Convention, constitutes discrimination if the necessary and appropriate modification and adjustments that do not impose a disproportionate or undue burden are denied and are needed to ensure the equal enjoyment or exercise of a human right or fundamental freedom. Examples: the organizers did not support the travel costs of the participant's personal assistant. The hotel management ignored the request of the client using a wheelchair to temporarily remove the shower glass panels, preventing him from taking a bath. The company did not allow the exam to be taken using the laptop with screen reader. Many national laws and policies perpetuate the exclusion and isolation of and discrimination and violence against persons with disabilities. They often lack a recognition of multiple and intersectional discrimination or discrimination by association, fail to acknowledge that the denial of reasonable accommodation constitutes discrimination, and lack effective mechanisms of legal redress and reparation. Such laws and policies are commonly not regarded as disability-based discrimination because they are justified as being for the protection or care of the persons with a disability or in their best interest. Equality and non-discrimination are at the heart of the Convention and evoked consistently throughout its substantive articles, with the repeated use of the wording "on an equal basis with others," which links all substantive rights of the Convention to the non-discrimination principle. On an equal basis with others means that neither additional nor lesser rights are given to persons with disabilities compared to the general population. However, it requires state parties to take concrete measures to ensure that persons with disabilities exercise and enjoy the full range of their human rights and fundamental freedoms. Learning activity number 7. What is ableism? On a physical or virtual notepad, write down the word or words that come to your mind when you think of ableism. Here's a concept of ableism using the short animation video What is Ableism? Produced by the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Ableism considers certain typical characteristics of body and mind as essential for living a life of value. Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities A/HRC/43/41, paragraph 9, and having an impairment is different from the desired standards of appearance, behavior, and functioning. This leads to the lives and experiences of persons with disabilities being less valued and results in prejudice, discrimination, and exclusion. Ableism is usually behind negative perceptions and stereotypes about persons with disabilities. It causes an unconscious bias, similar to unconscious biases related to gender or race. This value system, which assumes the lives of persons with disabilities are of less value, leads to stigma and significant discrimination, including, for example, segregation, forced sterilization, deprivation of liberty, denial of legal capacity, or the failure to consider persons with disabilities as credible experts on their own lives. Ableism can be eliminated through the following: attitudinal change, inclusive and disability-specific policies, programs, and activities, sufficient budget allocation, comprehensive accessibility, provision of assistive technology, and availability of community support services. The state has the primary obligation of doing all of these, but we also have a role as individuals and part of our respective organizations to make this all happen. Learning activity number 8. Congratulations! You've reached this far. Thank you for your hard interest and hard work and determination to finish this course. As you concluded the part 1 of this course and continue with part 2 work, please reflect and answer the following. Please give at least 3 specific things that you want to share about this course to others. Please give at least 2 specific ways you will apply your learnings to your work. Please give at least 1 commitment that you will make to ensure full inclusion and effective participation of women, girls, and LGBTQIA+ persons with disabilities. See you in part 2! Acknowledgements. Sheila May Menzo Agarao would like to acknowledge her references. Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, CRPD Committee, Council of Europe, International Disability Alliance, International Disability and Development Consortium, CBM, and CBM Global Disability Inclusion.